Well, Krissy, thanks so much for doing this. Tell us a little bit about yourself in case everybody doesn't know who you are.
Yeah, so I am Krissy Buck, and I'm the owner of the Digital Neighborhood, and I help businesses humanize their brands to build online inclusive communities. That's my elevator pitch.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about what that means. Like to unpack, like what's the digital neighborhood? What do you mean by that? Like help me to understand. Because I know it's part of why we're talking. I'm super excited about what you do. So tell me about what that means.
Yeah, so marketing is no longer in our court anymore. We're definitely on the defense with consumers online. You know, with the advent of the internet, um, more and more each year they gain the power in their buying decisions. They're able to research products, research pricing, and what the digital neighborhood does is it builds relationships because more and more people they are looking at investing in small business, investing in people that they personally know. I just had a conversation this morning with a realtor, and there is a real estate agent on every corner.
Yeah.
So, like, no longer can you broadcast your messaging. You've got to go out and build relationships, and so that's what I do for brands. I build relationships. I build a community around their brand that encourages word referrals. It builds trust, and it just multiplies, and it's just awesome. I mean, being in community with people, it's just fun, and yeah, so that's what the digital neighborhood does.
So tell me, like, because we've both been around long enough, especially with the internet. Like, I remember, you know, starting out with, America Online. This was kind of it was kind of a joke, and then came this like we had the dot-com bubble. We had this kind of surge, and social media came around, and like people kind of viewed it as a silver bullet, but it's got this kind of plus and this minus. But there's this point at which like it became clear to you that these online communities, these online experiences and relationships were more than just they were more than just an extension of real world relationships. That they really were communities in and of themselves. So tell me about like how you discovered that and what it did to change how you viewed and interacted with folks.
Well, this is a story that's been unfolding for the last decade. About 10 years ago, I found myself in a position where I had no close friends. And one day I was at the grocery store at lunch, and I was going to pop in and get something from the deli. And I saw these women getting out of their car, and I'm pretty sure they worked at the local elementary school. And as I'm following them in, they're telling each other like, "Oh, you look so cute today. Your outfit's so nice." And I just remember thinking, man, I wish I had some positive female friendships in my life. And shortly after that, I was introduced to some people that I ended up joining their church with them, and then a year later going on mission. So being a missionary in my own context, so my neighborhood or work or school or whatever that looked like. And so then fast forward about 8 years later, through the of learning what it meant to be a missionary in my own context, I learned how to treat people well and how to accept them where they were at. Really, how to build a community that, that promotes um, serving each other and doing life with one another. And about then, my two oldest were in high school, and I was thinking, man, I'm young, and what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And so I went back to school and I took a digital marketing class that I aced, and I just decided this is what I want to do. And I landed a job with a tech startup here in Wichita. And about a year and a half into that, we developed a product that puts captions on videos. Now, we knew that the majority of people who had bought into the idea of video, one, and also captioning that video was digital marketers. And
Right.
those at that point were my people. Like, this is my tribe.
Yeah.
And so I used everything that I had learned in missional church planting, how to be a member of that community and serve that community. And I took all those practices and I didn't even realize, like, I didn't have a framework for this. It was just part of my DNA. It's something that I did every day. But I took those same principles into the business world and I built a global community around this brand in just 10 months. Um, and so I went from, having a very small local personal community around me to this expansive global community. And these people I still talk to every single day online. And, they live in Vancouver, Canada, and they live in Australia, and some live in London. And they are as close to me as, my church. I realize that when you are intentional about spending time with people, physically or virtually, and you're doing it in an authentic way, you can develop authentic relationships.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've seen that, like, even with, like, my kids have grown up with always having access to, parents, grandparents, and cousins, even though, like, my brother and his family live in Zimbabwe, Africa, my mom and dad live in Kentucky. But my kids have always had that experience of having this closeness, because of technology, because of these virtual relationships. And I was telling them at one point early on, when their mom was out of town, she actually had to suffer through going to Hawaii with my mother-in-law. And so I was at home with the kids alone, and we were FaceTiming with mom, and we hung up. And one of them said, "Did you like to FaceTime for your parents? You were," and I said, "Well, you do that. Like, that wasn't, the phone wasn't even mobile. It was attached to the wall. Like, you couldn't do this."
Yeah.
And they looked at me and they said, "Well, didn't you just feel sad all the time when you weren't together?" Um, and I was like, we just didn't know any better. Like, we didn't know that we could have relationships that spanned distance the way we do now. Like, it wasn't something that was even a part of it. So how do you take that principle? Like, I know how to do it in my family. Like, I know how to do it with my brothers. But how do you take that principle and apply it to brands? Like, how do you build this community online?
Yeah. So people started asking me that question last fall. How are you doing what you're doing? Because at that point, in just 10 months, well, by then it was like maybe 8 months, we had users in over 60 countries.
Wow.
And yeah, so people started asking me, how are you doing this? I was like, I'm just doing it. And so I had to really break down what I did each day. And so I have 3 steps that I follow, and that accept people where they're at in the buying journey. And by doing that, you're welcoming people into your community. And you might think, oh, I don't have any time to waste on people who aren't interested in buying. But what you're doing is you're welcoming them into your community. They're learning from the other people in your community, some of whom are probably clients of yours. So just by them sharing their experience around your product or service, they are doing the selling on your behalf. And so really, like, it becomes an inbound sales process instead of, going out and finding leads. So just accepting people where they're at in the buying journey, whether that's top of funnel or bottom of funnel. And honestly, they might not ever be interested in your product or service.
Yeah.
And that's okay. They still add value to your brand because they are bringing their own expertise in their niche, and they're joining the conversation that's happening around your brand. The second step is seeking out the influencers. So this was huge for me. Influencers are special people. And I'm sure, like, a lot of you are thinking influencer and you're thinking like the Kardashians.
Yeah.
And they're special people too. But when you think of like the micro influencers, and we have dozens here in Wichita that, have their own food blogs, beauty blogs, or, are just experts, maybe have a podcast or something. Those people are influencing hundreds, if not thousands of people. One group I belong to is called Sunflower Steals, and this woman is based in Johnson County, so up by Kansas City. And she has like 100 in this group discount, like this group that she has on Facebook. And I have bought multiple things that she has shared in her group, just because I trust her. I don't know her from Adam, but she's built this trusted network, this community where women will go on there, and they don't just go on there to find out how they can get the cheapest Roomba. They go on there and they actually engage with each other and ask for advice, and it's pretty awesome. And so seek out the influencers, connect with them, collaborate with them, work alongside them, allow them to introduce you to their community. But I would say also, introduce your own community to them. And it's really like this good, like cross promotion process that everybody wins. And also one thing I've learned about influencers is influencers influence influencers.
Yeah.
And so you will start to see your community multiply, and you probably, in fact, I know you will not even know that it's happening or who's talking about you, but because influencers are talking about you to other influencers,
Yeah.
You'll start to see, like in Google Analytics, you'll start to see that grow. And then the third step is just go to where people are. So, going back to, FaceTime and the internet and all of that, when I love that you called it America Online.
Oh man, it was such a big deal when I was a kid. Like I remember, I just had this conversation with a buddy last night of, I remember my computer teacher making fun of people talking in American online chat rooms. Like I remember going to a Kentucky Wildcats American online chat room to talk about, I want to say it was Tony Delk, but talk about a couple of Kentucky players, and he thought that was the stupidest thing that he'd ever heard. That you'd go talk to somebody on the internet about basketball. Like he just thought like that's never going to catch on. Like what a dumb idea that is. And
I love it.
It's just always stuck with me at how dismissive we were to those early stages of this thing unfolding, as quirky and as odd as it was at the time.
Yeah, well, fast forward to from 1997 to
Yeah.
2020, and how many daily users does Facebook have? I've lost count. I think LinkedIn a couple of years ago had 500 million daily users.
Yeah.
And so really the concept of going to where people are at, your audience is online.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where they're at. And that's where you need to be engaging them. And I don't mean like broadcasting your message like a billboard onto your Facebook page and then waiting for people to come. No, you need to actively go out as your brand and engage with other people's content. They've spent time and money creating this content. So celebrate it, like it, share it, comment on it, create a conversation around it, really make it about them. People can't help themselves when you comment on their stuff. They're going to go look and check you out and see who you are. So it's being authentic and it's being kind, but it's also leading people back to your own platforms, your own, accounts.
Yeah.
But not just virtually going to where people are, I would say even like physically. So I spent a lot of my time last year at events, and all of these people that I had made friends with online through business, I got to meet them in person and have, meals with them, coffee with them, lunch with them, dinner with them at conferences. And if you can try to share, so think about like a conference, it's usually about 3 days. If you can intentionally try to share each meal with somebody at that conference, what is that, 9 meals that you're sharing with somebody? And there's something so intimate about sharing a meal with someone. I mean, like, you don't just invite people to your house anymore for dinner. Like that, kind of like that thing has come and gone. I wish it would come back.
Yeah.
But, when somebody invites you to their house, like it feels really special. So, sharing a meal with somebody that you met at a conference or somebody that you want to meet at a conference, even just coffee in the morning, there's something really special about that.
I think so too. That I just had a conversation. I actually have coffee with somebody this week that I met through Facebook here locally, and I needed his help with some services and in taking care of a mutual client, and we just hit it off. And I don't totally understand the side of business that he's in, and I was like, man, we should grab coffee. And he's like, I'd love to. And so we're actually getting coffee this week to sit down and talk about it. And I do think there's a level of even in the middle of all the stuff that's going on, like all of the things that are happening, where you feel so isolated. I have definitely reached the point where like I am enthusiastic about taking a walk just to get out of my house a little bit.
Yeah.
And my kids are the same way. They're absolutely the same way. We're all, I don't think we're sick of each other yet, but we're really close. And
Real close.
but that ability to like forge a new relationship in the middle of all of this while stuck at home is just unique, and those kind of things
Yeah.
couldn't have happened even 10 years ago. It was really hard to do that because you had websites and blogs, but you didn't have places where everybody was interacting the way you do now. And it's just kind of changed everything. Are there some brands in particular that you've seen that have just really killed it during this whole crisis, and how they've continued to cultivate a neighborhood, cultivate a community around them? Is there anybody that jumps to mind?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this morning. There's a product, tech product that's super cool, called Lately,
Okay.
and it's an AI. So you just plug in your blog posts, and it will use its AI engine to create tweets for you.
Okay.
Um, their sales guy over there, Chris Bro, um, he continues. I saw him having a conversation with somebody that I know here locally.
Yeah.
He just continues to go out and find people who might be a good fit for his product, and he just has a conversation with them. Like, it doesn't even have to be around Lately.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what the conversation I saw on Twitter was, but it was like, something just, I don't know, just this person loves Marvel. So let's just say it was like Marvel. And he just, added his own take on it. Um, Funny enough, during this whole thing, he had COVID. He
Really?
actually got sick. Yeah, and he shared his process, and shared what he was going through the whole thing. And so there's also this concept that I learned, doing life with instead of at or for. And he was definitely like letting us in on his life and what it was like to live in his basement away from his family.
Oh, I can't
Um,
imagine.
get a glimpse of what he was going through. He was doing life with potential clients and clients, out on social media. It was pretty awesome. And then another account that I strive to be like is Wendy's. I mean, it doesn't matter what's going on in the
Yeah.
world. Wendy's, they're killing it. Um, yeah, I mean, those are two that come to mind.
Wendy's has been really interesting to watch, um, that because there's that very different voice in how they communicate, where they're snarky and
Yeah,
they're like this kind of faux competitiveness that is just a hallmark of how they've handled things. But it's obvious they don't take themselves too seriously, which I think is
yeah,
one of the things that makes being in a relationship with somebody so easy, that if they're really serious, it's almost impossible to, if they take themselves as serious, it's impossible to really engage with them deeply, in any kind of like long-term relationship, because they don't laugh at themselves, they don't see themselves as funny. But when you have somebody like Wendy's, and Steakums is one of those that's been, you know,
Jacobs is a great one too. Yeah,
they have been just, their Twitter has been this extraordinary mix of like self-deprecating and insightful, that has just been awesome. Like, it's genuinely been fun to watch them uh kind of create a platform for themselves. And who would have thought like a shaved meat product, a frozen shaved steak product, would have a voice in 2020? But they do. And I think that's the challenge of like figuring out, whatever your brand is, whatever you do, um, how to humanize yourself and how to find those connections. Um,
yes.
what would be something like, I, have you seen some of the ways that folks have interacted? Like one of the things I've noticed is as folks have interacted with Corona and with COVID and how that has changed things. There's been this like just good neighborliness that has
Hmm.
kind of permeated a lot of, at least locally here in Wichita, and I think globally too, but definitely around the country, where you've seen people kind of go above and beyond. Like I'm in this group on Facebook that is looking for people are sharing recommendations for restaurants that are open and how
Yeah.
to access them. And there were some older folks that said like, "Hey, I don't want to use an app to try to buy food. Is there anybody that I can just call that does delivery?" And there was like 15 people within the first hour that said like, "Hey, if you want to send me a message, here's my name, here's my phone number. I'd be happy to go pick something up for you if that would be helpful."
I
Just
love
like this
that.
this random grandma here in Wichita, like, like let me just offer help where I can, and like you've seen that. Have you seen that kind of translate into how brands and relationships have translated online? Have you seen that as well?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I was invited to speak at a summit at the end of the month that's really the organizers put it together for people who have found themselves unemployed and are going to try to create their own business. And so really it's focused on helping people from the beginning of their
Yeah.
business. So giving them actionable um, content that they can put to use right away. And so, I mean, these are digital marketers. They could probably market themselves to these people, but instead, they're pulling together, experts in marketing and entrepreneurship, and teaching it to people, which I think is super awesome. I'm excited to be a part of that. Um, but I mean, I think you're right. Like just the neighborly thing.
Yeah.
Um, I have seen more people celebrate each other lately, celebrate their wins. I had a friend who just celebrated a decade in business, and that's huge right now. And it's funny because if you do the math, she started her business during the last recession.
Yeah.
And so here she is, working through this downturn. And so, I've been invited to a couple of Zoom birthday parties. I mean, it's just amazing, like um, the level of connectiveness that we have right now. And then also, I've just been asking because I'm totally zoomed out, like
Yeah.
totally zoomed out.
Yeah.
I've been asking, like, is everybody on board for video moving forward, or are people ready to see each other in real life? And the majority, I think, on my little non-scientific,
Yeah.
um, you know, um, what's the word I'm looking for, TJ?
Non-scientific poll. You're
Thank you. My poll. 80% said that
yeah.
they were ready to meet people in real life. So I am too.
Yeah.
I'm ready to see people in real life. I'm ready to give hugs and handshake again. Morning, I met somebody for the first time, and we both went to go handshake, and I was like, oh, can't do that.
Absolutely.
Can't do that. And so I did the Malibu Creative because Malibu Creative shared this,
Yeah, yeah.
like the different way. So I gave them a little elbow bump.
Absolutely. That is I've had a couple of those that were like part of when we even did that video internally. One of the things is like it's so awkward to like I'm 38 years old and like I now have to learn how to greet people new like I'm a 5-year old, like look them in the eye, but don't touch their hands. It's like it's this weird piece, but like we're all in this together. Like we're all learning this new dynamic. And I think on the other side of this, as we're continuing to grow, I do think it's bringing out some of the part of what makes us the best, and that is
Yeah.
that collaboration, that encouragement, that willingness to laugh and just kind of enjoy figuring things out together instead of always having to have everything sorted quickly.
Yeah. And I mean, look, we've all learned this. We've been practicing this while watching The Tiger King. I mean, talk about not
Absolutely.
being neighborly.
Absolutely. It's amazing how much like things have permeated our household. My kids, they're way too young for the Tiger King. They have no idea what it is. I don't even think they know I don't think they've ever even heard of it. But my 7-year-old was building Legos the other day, and they got knocked over, and she goes, "Oh, I'm never going to recover from this financially." Uh, because she she'd heard me make that joke to
Oh
Julie
my
at one point, and so now she's making she's like totally a part of our family's ethos now. Um,
Oh, that's awesome. That is so awesome. I
yeah,
love it.
it's a weird world we live in which my kids have pop culture references that quickly and don't even know where they came from. So what? Just out of curiosity, as we're kind of wrapping up here, is there something that you would
Yeah.
love to see change in how we do things? Collectively as a culture, collectively as a community here in Wichita, locally, or even nationally or globally, on the other side of this.
Yeah, I think, I think through all of this, people um, have learned just inherently how to connect better online.
Yeah.
Um, I think somebody shared this morning. Oh, it was Content Cal, which is a scheduling tool based out of the UK.
Okay.
And they were showing some analytics how social media, the use of social media has skyrocketed recently. And so people are learning how to connect online. And I would love to see that continue. But for businesses, and I just want to see businesses shift their paradigm um, towards, hey, like just because we're going back to normal doesn't mean that you have to um, spam people with your sales. You
Yeah.
know, continue to connect, continue to learn who people are, celebrate them, celebrate the things that make them them. Just because we're back to normal doesn't mean that people don't still have that need to belong. And
Yeah.
so continuing to invite people to belong to your brand, belong to your community around your brand, I want to see that happen more and more.
Absolutely. I hope that that happens. Like, there's a loyalty and a love I have for like restaurants in particular that like I liked them, like I enjoyed them, but like the way I feel about them now is very different.
Yes.
And like there's this it was a weird moment in when I realized like it was an act of deep commitment to community and neighborhood to get takeout tacos. Like that was an amazing moment for me during all of this. Is like there was something defiant and encouraging about ordering food to go. But it really was this pivot for all of us, I think, to learn how to grow and kind of be there together. So I'd love to see that continue too. So Krissy, as we've talked, is there anything that I should have asked you that I just didn't think about asking you that should have come up?
This is a great conversation, I think. It's one that challenged me. I had trouble coming up with some answers a little bit. But no, I think it was good.
Okay, great. Well, that's
Yeah,
see then I did my job. I got prepared ahead of time. That's great.
yeah.
So Krissy, my question for you is like if somebody wanted to learn more about you, they wanted to engage with the digital neighborhood, they wanted to talk with you or learn about it. In particular, the conference you were talking about coming up. What are some ways that they could connect with you?
Yeah, just follow me on social media. You can find me at the Digital Neighborhood, both on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And then you can also just check out my website and find all my links there. It's thedigitalneighborhood.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you jumping in and doing this with us. You're awesome. So, and
You're awesome.
we've also talked about it, but I still think the digital neighborhood is the best name ever. It's just great.
Hey, yeah.
So,
And so it just like it came up. I was sitting in a hotel room in London, like a tiny one,
yeah.
like
Oh, they're not
real
big there.
small,
They're not big there.
real small. And I was working on a virtual summit talk that I was doing, and um, you know, in our context, we're in the missional context, we're sent out into our
Yeah.
neighborhoods, and that's how I feel virtually. And so it just, yeah, it just, the name for the talk was how to leverage your digital neighborhood. And I just decided like right there, I don't want to do what I'm doing anymore, even
Yeah.
though I'm like sitting in London. Oh, by the way, on the other side of the river from Westminster,
Yeah.
but I don't want to be doing this anymore. I want to teach other people how to do this.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. It's a great name. And I love the embodiment of what it means to kind of be neighbors. So I just think it's awesome. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.